Sean, you're born in BC.
Edmonton.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I was born in Edmonton. My parents
Yeah.
fled communist Hungary in the 70s. They came through Halifax. And then I was born in Edmonton. And then when I was about, I think it was 4 or 5 years old, we moved. So most of my life I've been in British Columbia. But
Mm,
yeah, I'm
nice, man.
actually born in Edmonton. Good old Edmonton.
Good old Alberta and Edmonton, of course. Why not? So, how did you get started in real estate? What was it? Something you knew you wanted to do? Were you good at sales? How did this happen?
Yeah, so real estate kind of fell into my lap. So I've never had a non-commission job my entire life. So from the age of 15, actually, I guess I worked in a mill on the weekends. But
Mhm.
next to that, I did everything from selling computers and TVs at Future
Mhm.
Shop, sold cars, and then my mother-in-law, she was at RBC and basically said, like, you can't marry my daughter being a car salesman. So she was a mortgage specialist there and then basically guided me into that. So I worked for the bank for about 3 or 4 years. And during that time, obviously you meet a lot of realtors, you're doing mortgages for a lot of realtors. And I really didn't like the mortgage side of the business. It was very, it's not that I don't like numbers. I actually really like numbers. It's just trying to get people to use you as a mortgage broker, then trying to get them approved. And I was very pigeonholed into using RBC, and not to talk anything negative about them. They're a great product, great place to work in general. But I felt kind of like it was
Limited in a box. Yeah.
exactly. So funny enough, one of my managers at Future Shop when I was like 17, 18 was Adam, my current business partner that I own the brokerage with. And I was doing most of his business for his clients on the mortgage side. And then when I did his personal mortgage and I saw how much he made versus how much I work, and I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, I'm going to switch careers. So yeah, I started 10 years exactly in March. So in 2013, March of 2013.
Has it been a rewarding business to be a part of?
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, I have ADD, so I like the ability of doing a million different things. And real estate, you can be a developer, you can own a brokerage, you can sell real estate. So within that umbrella, there's a million different things you can do, which I like. Sometimes that's to the detriment of me, obviously. But yeah, it's been really rewarding. I love still to this day. I don't do too many like buyers and stuff anymore, but to this day, I still love like taking friends out and then buying their first places and kind of just them moving, into the grown-up life or whatever and being a part of their investments. And I'm doing $100 million deal right now in Peachland, so it's really cool to be exciting about transforming an entire area and building a community out of a mountain, basically, right? So, yeah, it's really cool. It's
Is
really
that
cool.
Dennis O'Rourke?
No, it's yeah, it's actually a friend of a friend, and it's 500 acres in Peachland that
Oh,
where we actually go up there on the 15th to meet with council representatives to see if
mhm.
we want to put like a Mission Hill type thing there, and then 500
Yeah.
acre or sorry 300 acre properties. It's gonna be interesting.
Everyone in Peachland's either freaking out or excited for this.
Yeah, one or the other. Exactly.
Have you heard of Dennis O'Rourke?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he started small, rags to riches from Calgary, and then moved to Edmonton. He owns a Sure Construction. He owns pretty much all those mountains out there, Sparkling Hill and Mission Hill and all that. That's him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
the guy
Gotcha.
won't stop building. And I'm thinking, man, you're almost 80. Like you just, when you love something, you just continue, don't you? Like it doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's not, money's always cool. Like you're a
Of
liar if you
course.
don't like money, but it really is not about money. Once your basics are covered, you really just like a lot of these entrepreneurs just really, well, I can speak for myself. I just like growth, I like challenges, doing new things. And what I really like about the development side versus sales that I've been doing, and it's not to diminish, you need salespeople create business and so on and so forth, but it's always been like an exchange. It's always like something on paper and I'm, not creating as much. So I really like the development side because, I'm helping put together this mountain is now going to be this, and it's partly because of me. So
Super cool.
it's kind of cool and rewarding to see that kind of stuff happen.
First, have you always been somebody that was creative? Did you always have that side to you?
Um, yeah, like I love to create. I'm not very artistic, so it's kind of my median of, I guess, my artistic side or my creative side is business and coming up with ideas and bringing people together. That's what I really enjoy doing. So I think, yeah, I love creating ideas, coming up with ideas, and then watching them come to fruition. When we started the brokerage in 2017, it was just me and my team and Adam's team. So like 10 or 11, 12 agents. And now it's 400 plus, right? So it was really cool seeing this idea, a name. It's not a franchise, and not to talk about franchises, nothing wrong with them whatsoever, but it's just something that never existed. There was no Stonehouse before. We just came up with this idea and created it, right? So that's I really enjoy that part.
Where did the name Stonehouse come from? I love it, by the way, man.
Thanks, bro. I'd love to. Everybody always asks that question, and I got to come up with a better story, I think. But really, really, what it was is we were looking for something that was like grounded, that was strong, that had some kind of real estate portion to it, obviously. So that's the house portion, and then Adam is half German, so we're just like
Hoss House.
exactly. Adam's fiance actually came up with the name Stone House, and I'm like, oh, let's just turn it to Stone House,
Mhm.
HAUS with the German, and it's stuck.
Yeah. Do you get inspiration from looking down south? So, the agency or Ryan Serhant, do you look at those folks and say, can some of that be applied here in Canada? Because obviously there's a different way of doing business there, a different tone, different vibe. I think it's less aggressive here in Canada, would you say? In terms of how you approach clients, you're from the marketing to the advertising, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but it's
Mhm.
also different. Yeah, the culture here is different. But even I'll give you an example. Like we have a brokerage in Kelowna that we just opened. I go to Kelowna or I go to Victoria or even I go to Calgary, and you look at the response time of agents in those areas versus like Vancouver or Toronto. So it's a little bit like that. Like in Kelowna, when we were trying to find a place to lease for the office space, I called, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was 20 something agents to find us a space up there. Right. And it took 4 days for one of them to call me back. So, and it's not a massive commission, but it was 10 grand still. So it's a decent amount of chunk of money. Whereas here, like if, for example, my agents on my team, if you sign up for one of our websites, you're probably going to get 6 calls in 6 days to make sure that, you know what I mean? So it's a different mentality when it comes. I'm lucky enough to know Ryan Serhant. I brought him to Vancouver on a speaking tour, and we keep in touch once in a blue moon. But a lot of what he does and what happens in New York, it's different just because the way their business is structured is a lot different. New York doesn't even really have an MLS. So
Mm.
there's a lot of things behind the scenes. Like we write all of our contracts basically in Canada, right? And then it goes to lawyers. In New York, you don't write contracts. You write like kind of like an offer to lease or an offer to purchase. And all the contracts are actually done by the lawyers. So there's different processes. The agencies in Vancouver, they're opening up in Toronto and they're on the island as well. But that's more of like the luxury style. So we have a luxury brand coming out, the House Collection, that's going to be similar to that. Yeah, there's everybody prospects. The basics of real estate's the same. It's just, I guess, what you're prospecting for and how you do it is a little bit
A
different.
little bit different. Okay. And now not only do you have Stone House, but you also have a media or marketing department now, specifically out there.
Yeah.
What made you guys create that?
Well, so we started a tech company 2 years ago, and for anybody looking to start a tech company, I warn you to make sure you have very thick skin. It's and especially when you're not like a programmer, a coder, or a developer yourself, it is yeah, it's difficult. I was in India earlier this year. I'm probably going to go back at the end of the year. I have a team there and a team here. So back to your question on why we started a media thing. Well, it kind of went hand in hand with tech. Because we have a new CRM online lead generation system called House Leads that we've created from scratch. And we decided to do that because we've done vast majority of our business and our growth has come from online leads. from either Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever have you. And we've used a lot of these big platforms out there. And the big platforms are great. There's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. We just kind of tweaked it to what actually works on our side, because a lot of them, like you said, are, you know, American based or something different. So this works really well for us. A, and B, we offer it to our agents for free. So we are going to white label it and offer it to all agents down the line with the cost, but it's going to be a bit of a differentiator for our agents. When it comes to media, so we do, I have full-time media staff for my team and for the brokerage. And the agents in the brokerage, they all use their own people. Many of them use the same company and the same people as well. But yeah, you know, one of the things that I was taught when I was getting coached by Grant Cardone for a while and Patrick Bet-David and all this is money follows attention, right? So the easiest, best platform to make or to get attention and get your voice and your message out is through social media right now, still, right? TV, all these things are still very powerful. If you look at like $1 Million Listing and all that kind of stuff, right? However, it's a very hard or very expensive barrier to get into that, right? So social media, I think and having a team that can make it look professional, I think is huge.
Yeah. You know, oftentimes people think, well, I can just do it myself. Why do I need to pay for a media team or even an editor? Mm-hmm. What made you decide, hey, I need to bring this on instead of me taking on that workload and learning and saving an X amount of dollars doing it myself?
So I think there's a point in between where you might want to do some of your own stuff. Like, for example, I'm still doing a ton of my own stories. I'm still like, it's important to have some of your own content through your cell phone. But the reality is that right now I'm driving in too many lanes already. So I'm trying to like remove lanes, right? It's time. It's time, and time equals money. And where are you putting your time and effort into? And I'm a true believer if, you know, people that do well in business or well in anything in life really are people that are very good at it, right? So I'm a big believer in the skill set and how do you get your skill set up higher. So I want to hire people that skill sets are up here and love doing the video editing, love doing the shooting, love doing that kind of stuff, right? Because I will probably never have the time, patience, or whatever it is to be at that level. So I would rather pay somebody a few $100 or, you know, put them on salary of thousands of bucks a month or whatever, have the content already done, and then I do what my skill set's at, which is the leads, the stuff that comes from that content, I convert that into business.
Yeah. It's like focusing on your strengths, letting your weaknesses go, and just driving through and getting the right people, the best of the best in what they do and love doing. Exactly. And that are coachable. Yeah.
100%. And I think that's one of the, in the new business coaching stuff that we've launched, that's one of the pillars that we always talk about is you always hear like, okay, what you're bad at, you got to make better and so on and so forth. There's certain things like you need to be able to write a contract in real estate, even if you suck at it. You need to be able, like, there are some mandatory things that you need to be able to be proficient in. But for myself, like, I hate paperwork in general. I hate doing emails. I hate doing all this stuff. I hate doing like the actual marketing, like where things go, that kind of stuff. I'm the idea guy and the execution guy. So where I went from making X amount to, you know, quadruple that has been always in some sort of leverage. And some sort of leverage is always finding somebody using disc profiles, using all kinds of different scenarios, find somebody that absolute loves, like that is their passion in life, doing what I hate. Right. And then I can just focus on what I love doing that generates me income. They love doing, and now all of a sudden it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 11 now. You know what I mean? And really that is the kind of return you get when you put the right people in place that are meant to do what they're supposed to do.
How was it to scale from 0 to 1 employee? Because I think that's one of the hardest to do, you know, the delegation. Well, I can do it myself. Why should I tell someone what I need to get done by the time I tell them I can get it done?
Yeah. So even with like before Stonehouse, I was an independent agent with the team at a different brokerage. So I remember that being and it's funny that you mentioned that because it's 100% true. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. And keep in mind, I was still making three, four, five, $600,000 a year. Like, it wasn't like I was making like 50 grand and now I got to pay somebody 50 grand. Right. And I was only paying them back then, because this is 10 years ago, minimum wage, which was like $12 or $13 an hour or something. Right. But I remember my first employee, which was my assistant, and she still works for us on and off doing other things. And the amount of responsibility I had, and is she going to screw this up? And now I'm like, oh my God, if I don't do a deal, like this person's going to go homeless now too. You know, they're relying on my success as much as I am. So it was one of the best things that ever happened in business, and by far one of the scariest, right? And it's scary because of those things that we mentioned, but it's also like, if you're looking for an accountability tool, having somebody reliant on you in that sort of way as an employee is absolutely massive. Now, when it comes to delegating, I think it's just really important. Like anything, it's accountability. You're both accountable to each other, right? So I just had a coaching session with one of our top agents, and he's going through a growth strategy. And this guy's almost makes $1 million a year. And he's like, I want to add a couple more people to my team, but I'm just going to say it politely. He's like, but most of these agents are idiots. Like, they're not going to do what I do. Right. And he's had issues bringing agents on before. Right. So I'm like, okay. So I asked him straightforward. I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, what do you mean? And what do I do? And I'm like, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, you know, I answer calls at 11 p.m. He started going through a list of things. I'm like, okay, so the people that were idiots before that you brought on, did you give them a list of all the things that you do? Because we can't hold them accountable to being you or just as good as you if they don't even know what you are. If that makes sense. So if you're going to bring somebody on and hold them accountable, it's making sure that you have, this is the job description, this is what I expect, this is exactly, and as detailed and listed as possible. And you're both signing on to being able to do this, right?
Here are my expectations. Here are my standards.
Exactly, right? And that's the thing, is that you hear that a lot. It's like, well, I don't want to bring somebody on and they're going to screw up my paperwork, or they don't have the same standards, or they don't have the same morals as I do. Well, these are all generic terms, right? So you need to put those terms onto paper, what exactly it is. And maybe they do, they just didn't realize that, okay, you expect me to pick up the phone at 11 p.m. You know what I mean? And maybe that's not right for them. So you'll find it right at the beginning, and you can filter through all the people till you do find the right person that would match that criteria.
It's funny when they say work-life balance in real estate.
It is. It's I always tell everybody when they come into real estate, I'm like, it's hold on one second here. Somebody was trying to sign in there. I always tell everybody it's the easiest and most difficult job you'll ever have. And even in sales, and the sales side, it's because when you work on a car dealership or something like that, somebody comes onto the lot, right? That's difficult because you got to jam them into whatever. If you're selling Mercedes and they want a BMW, you got to convince them to buy a Mercedes, right? But it's also easy because that client just came there, right? Where in real estate, you got to go find the client first. Once you find the client, though, I don't care what they buy, as long as they're happy and as long as it's a good property. Big house, small house, pink house, makes no difference to me. That part is generally usually easier, right? But the second thing I hear about from every single agent that wants to join real estate is, oh, I just want the freedom of time. And the reality is that there are systems down the line where you can escape and have your phone shut off. But for the first few years, while you're building your organization, basically, it's even when you're on vacation, you're on, right? So yeah, you can choose when you go to the gym, and you can, schedule out a lot of different things, but you're on your client's time most of the time. It's tough biz.
Oh yeah. When you look at real estate webmasters, how come there hasn't been anyone out there similar to them or competing against them? Because oftentimes they're the leader when it comes to CRMs or lead generation tools.
There's actually, I would say there's a lot of much bigger ones than they are. They're a little bit different on how so I've never used them particularly myself. I've used Commission Zinc. I've used Boomtown, Real Geeks, Sierra. So there's quite a few big ones like Commissions Inc. got bought out for like $270 million or something like that a few years back by Fidelity. So there's a lot of big ones. I think what it is it depends on what you're looking for as a realtor or as a business person with these sites. Some are like non-branded online lead generation sites. So like a couple of mine, search burnabyrealestate.ca, search langleyrealestate.ca, like, and they come to it and it's kind of like realtor.ca. They're looking for a home. I capture your lead, my agent calls you, kind of thing, right? So those are pretty simplistic. If you're looking for branding, which Webmasters does a lot more of the branding side, and then that goes into the CRM. I think they're probably one of the best at what they do there. I think what you're going to find now, though, is, and kind of what we're leaning into, and I think most people are trying to, is get more into the AI side. So we've always had drip campaigns. We've created our own drip campaigns. And so that's been almost AI-ish, whereas like you look at a particular home 3 times, you get an email that automatically sends out that says, hey, check out this home. It might be exactly what you need. And you have no idea. And it just sounds like it came directly from me. And it's got spelling mistakes in it and all kinds of stuff, right? So it looks like I sent it to you. So we've always had interactive drip campaigns, but I think now being able to log into AI and have it nurture your clients a little bit more, I think that's probably the next step and where you're seeing most of these CRMs going.
So you're thinking more chatbots and customizations on that end?
Yeah, and when I say chatbots, it'll be less like not necessarily opening up a chatbot, but it will be through text messages. It'll be through, so it'll be like me texting you, but AI will know when it says, like the ones I've just been looking at and we've been looking at implementing in phase 3 of ours, is that when you sign up, for example, it'll automatically send you a text message and email from my website, right? And it'll send it on my behalf. Be like, hey, this is Sean. Thanks again for signing up. You need anything, let me know. Something like that, right? And depending on your response, it'll be like, yeah, no problem. It'll automatically message back something else as well through the text. So it'll have a communication through the text and email on my behalf. And it will limit itself to what it can say and so on and so forth, within rules and regulations, obviously. But it'll get to a point where it'll notice something. And this is kind of what you're wanting to do, is because right now, like one of our databases has almost 60,000 leads in it, names and numbers, right? So it'll get to a point where it's talking to 60,000 people. And soon as it says like, I'm interested in the next 2 months kind of thing, or get something like that,
it moves into a different category, or
and then we'll get a notification. And then my agents are basically dealing with people that are more like hot and ready to go kind of thing.
Yeah. And how does it cycle through the agents? Is it XYZ gets this lead, the next Y? Is it like a row in a row?
Yeah. It's so it's called weight and balanced, but basically depending on my agent. So if they're calling more, they're doing better. So that's kind of like how we prioritize. They're weighted out of 10, for example. So if I gave you a 10, you would get, 3 out of 4 leads or something like that, whatever it may be. But it's basically just the next agent gets it, the next agent gets it, goes through that.
Where can you see or hope to see AI in real estate take off? And what are you worried about when it comes to AI in real estate?
When it comes to AI, I think the nurturing process is where it's going to take off personally, because I think like one of the biggest with sales in general, especially big ticket sales, it's not necessarily a right now deal. It could be 2 years from now. And that's one of the reasons why we love online leads so much in general, is that it allows you to build a relationship for 2 years. So I'm not competing against other agents. I'm not competing against whatever, because I've been talking to Zach for 2 years. You're not going to go buy from somebody else, right? So that's one of the things that we've liked. However, that's also where a lot of the work is. Every day you're doing a couple hours of follow-up. You're sending text messages, you're calling, sending stats, things like that. So I think if we can automate most of that and let AI build that relationship based on who you are and the things that you would say, I think that would minimize the amount of work. And as a real estate agent, I think that's something that would help. The other thing too, there's obviously ways of learning and like finding properties, and there's things that they can say, okay, well, this person looked at this type of property 3 times. Well, AI now can run image scans and see like, okay, out of this picture, this is something that Zach would like, right? So it could search product better, but I don't think that that's something that is really missing. Most people that are active are looking through every listing anyways. But I think that's the biggest thing. Um, where I think it could go wrong, I mean, it could replace a lot of um, inventory that's repeatable. So what I mean by that, and this is kind of something that's come up, is like it's now more or less been proven that you're going to need realtors more or less forever. Like this whole online thing, Zillow tried it, they lost $1 billion.
Yeah, they did.
So yeah, so I don't think that that's going to be something that replaces agents. But where I can see it replacing agents, and where the Zillow thing I thought could too, is like pre-sale market, pre-construction, things that are brand new, and we have like 72 of the exact same units, right? I think that takes less sales, especially in the pre-sale and hot market, things like that. So I think you'll find it AI doing a lot there. I think right now you're starting to see AI implemented on the mortgage side in the business in the States already. So, instant pre-qualifications, and then once it's pre-qualified, it'll show you the houses on the market that you can buy right now. And you know what I mean? So things like that. I can't see it replacing, because if you're talking to an AI, you're always going to want an opinion of a human as well. I just think that's how we are, right? But
yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you look at the whole thing, how important has processes and systems been to you? Because if you didn't have them, you'd be all over the map. So organizing yourself and saying, if this happens, we hope for the outcome of B, C, D, for example. How important has that been, process?
Yeah, process is huge, especially for people like myself, like I mentioned, with the ADD and all over the things. I'm a yes man, so I would say yes to a million different things, and unfortunately, I still do too much. But so for me, I feel that systems are probably it saved my career in the way that at the very beginning, like most agents, even though my first year I did well, if you look at the actual year, it was a roller coaster. There was months where I did nothing, 3-4 months, and then I would do 15 deals in a month my first year, like just weird stuff like that, because I was just chasing deals. There was no business behind it, right? So, one thing I say all the time to my agents, whenever I do some coaching or whatever it is people always come to me like, hey, Sean, especially during our business planning sessions, next year I want to do 20 deals. This year I did 10, next year I want to do 20. So I asked the simple question. I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do different next year? And it's so common, and it's not wrong, but it's just, it just shows the lack of how we think as professionals, many cases on the real estate side. But the most common answer is, I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to work harder to make those work. And yeah, you may need to work harder, right? But then I just flipped the question back to them. I'm like, okay, now imagine I asked Elon Musk that. He's on stage and he's about to say, we're going to do an extra $1 billion in sales in the first quarter. And I ask him, hey, Elon, how are you going to do that? And he says, we're going to work harder. What would happen to the stock? Well, Elon would probably go up, but anybody else, it would probably crash, right? There's no plan. There's no system. What is he actually? And this is what I flipped him. What would he actually say? This is going to be our product launch. This is how our marketing campaign, and this is how we're going to build them out. This is the new gigafactory we're going to create. This is the new, et cetera, et cetera. There's a plan and system behind everything. And so you're working at where your goal is and working it backwards to what needs to be completed daily, right? So these are the things that I've been taught very luckily since day one in real estate, is to create a business, not so much just a sales job. It's a big difference between, even though I work for Stonehouse technically, and my agents work for Stonehouse technically, they're all independent contractors. They all work for themselves. You know how it is, right? So you need to create a business for yourself. And how do you do that? Well, one day you need to have your CEO hat. Then the next day you need to have your realtor hat, right? And they're two completely different roles, and you shouldn't be doing them at the same time. And I think once you create those systems and things come in place, that's also the time where you can start, having the actual days off when you're away from your phone, because you have a system of who's going to cover your clients. That's the time where like my phone gets shut off at 8 p.m. now. Why? Because they know where it goes if it doesn't. So it's building these systems out are absolutely huge. And right now to this date, because we've grown from 12 agents to 400 whatever ish agents in 6 years, it's at a point right now where we're needing to create massive overhauls and systems and changes because we want to be to 10,000 agents, right? So it's an ongoing process for sure.
Yeah. And it's never about the money. It's not. Like you said, it's like once you cover the basics of life, of course it matters. It's exciting because that's in business. How do you know if you're winning or losing? You look at the numbers, just like a hockey game. But after that, it's those goals, smashing them. And you're just like, hell yeah, we created this system or we've created this process or this product and it's exciting. But not all of those have worked. From the ones that do work, we talk about, but the thousands that never worked, how did you deal with failure and adversity? How do you deal with and stay positive and not be so hard on yourself? You know, it's so easy to critique ourselves. What has helped you?
Yeah. So yeah, and to that point, I've had way more failures than I've ever had successes, and I'm still continuously failing like every day. The one thing I like about jujitsu that one of the sayings was is you either win or you learn, right? So it's a very popular saying in jujitsu, and it's true. So I take failure as a learning lesson. Like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? This is one reason I'm big into mentorship and I've been coached by so many people is I want to learn what they did wrong so I don't have to do it too, right? But I think like, I've almost gone bankrupt a couple times in my life. Like there's been some massive failures. I've spent too much money. Even right now, I blew too much money, lost a bunch of money on a development deal and all this other kind of stuff. So it's a continuous learning process.
You got to sell the Huracan, bro.
That's that's it. It's I, I think what you have to it does take a thick skin to be an entrepreneur. Like some of the main things next to working hard, consistency, all this other stuff is you do have to have some risk appetite to be a business person. But I think one of the things that and I think you and I had chatted about it on Instagram before as well is that you have to have wins in your life. And I think daily wins, small wins, big wins, is what that allows you to do is it allows you to kind of have a confidence level that no matter what happens, I lose my house, I lose my boat, I lose my whatever, as long as I don't lose my family, you know what I mean? If I lose all that stuff, I can do it again because I've already done it, right? It's a much different mindset. And it almost sounds egotistical, but I look at it this way: is when somebody wins the lottery, right? They've never actually created millions of dollars. They've just been given it, right? So if they lose all of it, which many of them have gone bankrupt, I can't remember the stat, but it's something crazy. They're never going to make it again because they've never known how to, right? But if you've created a business, you've created some kind of system that has brought you success, even if that crashes, you can always redo it, and you'll probably redo it in half or a third amount of the time that you did before. So I feel like that's something that I've always have this like self-talk with is that, hey, worst case scenario, I'm not going to die. You know, it's memento mori kind of thing. I'm not dying. I just need to plug forward and keep moving forward. What's the worst that can happen? And that's kind of the mentality I have in a lot of these cases. And I look at it, if I don't have these challenges, if I don't have these things that bring me to the cusp of bankruptcy or whatever, and this may be wrong, I don't feel alive in many cases either. Like I love the challenge, you know, I'm seeking growth, right? And without failure, there is no growth. Otherwise it'd just be every other day.
Are you hard on yourself though at times?
Oh yeah.
Because we can look back at our pasts and say, wow, shit, I was a different person then. And you know, I could have handled situations a little better. And then you take that personally where, you know, it's hard to put yourself out there because it's a reflection of, what is it? Imposter syndrome. I don't deserve this. I don't feel like I do, but yet we all do deserve it. We all change, we evolve, we make mistakes, and we're going to continue making them. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I suffered from imposter syndrome forever. That's why my social media just started getting good or just started putting content. I don't know if it's good, but just started putting content out.
It's good.
Is because, you know, I'm like, hey, I'm not a Grant Cardone. Like the guys aren't getting coached by. I'm not a Wes Watson, a Patrick Bet-David. I'm like, I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars, you know? I'm just at the cusp of hopefully trying to build something. And so for me, in many cases, it was just like, oh, why do I have the right to even talk about this stuff, right? And really, it switched when I saw guys like Connor on my team, blew up, did 57 deals his first year off TikTok. He was on, he did
Off of TikTok, he made 57 deals.
57 deals.
So just for the listeners, how much would that be, give or take?
Over $500,000 in commission. Yeah.
I see.
And when he joined my team, he never had a TikTok account, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was Tom Ferry. I'm like, hey man, you should try doing this TikTok thing, because we had the videographers. He went down that path, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to get famous off TikTok. Let's see it. And he blew up on it. He's got a great personality. He's really good at doing it. But to give you an example, like, I've never been on Global BC, or I've been on CTV, but I've never been on Global BC. He was the real estate expert 2 months in on Global BC, and he never wrote a contract yet.
I love that. Yeah.
He was the expert on TikTok, right? So it just shows you, and it was a real mind opener. And then I start talking, because I do a lot of coaching, and I travel the world and do sessions and stuff like that. And then all these guys are like, oh man, you should be teaching this all the time. So back to kind of what you're saying is 100%. I get stuck in imposter all the time. I'm personally, when I look at my bank account, I'm like, wow, I should be here. And it like you said, it's not even the money. It's not the money. It's just where I envision somebody should be, or whatever it is. You're definitely hard on yourself. And in my past, I was a gangster when I was younger, right? Half my friends are cops now, which is hilarious, but I was a gangster when I was younger. I've done a lot of stupid stuff. Like I got fat for a while in business. Now I'm back on a health kick. So for me, like you said, you're always ever changing. And I always look at the Stoic philosophy behind that, is that, yesterday doesn't matter. Tomorrow doesn't matter. It's just today. And really, whatever I've done in the past, I read this, I can't remember what book, but it really rang true, is that I could go do 10,000 free throws right now and never win the 1996 NBA finals. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do today to change the past. There is nothing, and a lot of things that you do today, it's not guaranteed to happen tomorrow. I can get hit by a bus walking across the street, right? So whatever I'm doing today, I'm trying to do to enjoy today and to be in the moment. And it's not so much enjoyment as in do drugs, get high, like that kind of enjoyment, but feel that I'm of value to society. And once you start doing that consistently as many times as you can, then you start just building this overall feeling about your confidence, where you are. This is where the imposter syndrome starts to disappear more. It's just focusing on being productive today. And that's kind of how I've been able to kind of get my head out of stupid shit I've done in the past.
And it's also like, it's true, man. Like all the times when you're drinking or whatever, and you just look back, you're like, geez, I was such an idiot.
Well, especially now that you know better, right?
Now you know better, exactly. But you're right. When you start getting busy with things that are good for you and good for your community and the family and all that, life feels better. Like you feel better. You're like, I don't care. I'm better. Like you're proud of yourself. And I like that. Back in the day, exactly. Compounding interest. Yeah. Do you remember Bindi Johal?
Every Vancouver gangster remembers Bindi Johal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he was a little bit like, I was young, because I think he was in the 90s, right?
90s, early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was young when he was out. Like, I think I was still in elementary school or just getting into high school kind of thing. Because I'm 39. So yeah, I think, like 2002 I graduated. So yeah, I would have been like grade 7 or stuff. But even in grade 7, and I lived in Maple Ridge. So that was not Surrey or Vancouver where he was at. It's a completely different area. And we still know him. And then even today, like everybody's like, I'm cousins with Bindi. I'm like, Bindi's been dead for like 30 years now. I don't know what you're talking about. So that's one of the reasons, and even with conversations with Seb and stuff, I'm like, I want to create this, not so much like an outreach, but like, hey, if you're a young guy that wants to make money, I can show you how to make money. And now it's never been easier to make money as a 16-year-old doing online lead sales or selling Facebook ads. Or, there's this Iman Gadzazi or what I just started.
Oh yes, incredible what he's doing and the amount of money he's made. Holy shit, man!
$100 million or something, and he's like 24 years old, right? This was not possible 40 years ago.
No.
You know what I mean? So, so it is, there's no need to be a gangster anymore. There's no need to go through the stupid shit that I went through and a lot of people died doing and so on and so forth, right? There's no need for that whatsoever.
I hear about like El Chapo and a bunch of these individuals say, like looking back at history, Pablo Escobar, and you realize that these guys had such business sense and the operational skills. If they had the opportunity to run a Fortune 500, they would have killed it. Like amazing work, the
100%.
logistics, the planning, the strategy. Obviously, it was a wrong industry they were in, but imagine if they were applied in a you know acceptable society.
And I wouldn't agree, like I couldn't agree more, sorry, like that. It is, there is, I never, like, not saying I make tons of money, but my income right now is far superior than it ever was doing stupid stuff when I was young, and more so than any of those guys that were doing it back then that were the bosses, you know what I mean? So, and it is because it is endless opportunity when it comes to the legit side. The problem is that there's just not a lot of mentors. We don't learn about it in school, right? You don't learn about it in any, like, unless you're, thank God for YouTube these days and being able to see some of these things and having podcasts and having some of these outlets. But even going to university, I talk about this all the time. It blows my mind. I gave Patrick Bet-David, I want to say 26,000 US to be mentored by him and have like 6 calls. That's it. But so that's probably a year or two of university in tuition, right? I learned more from those 6 calls than I would learn in a master's degree, because you're learning from somebody that's actually done it and like, hey man, this is what works, execute. Whereas most of these professors, if not all of them, have never created a business. It's all out of a book that somebody like PBD wrote. Do you know what I mean? So
when we look at PBD, what he's done and he continues to do is remarkable, man. I'm a big fan of him as well. I watch all his stuff. Congrats to him. He owns a little bit of the Yankees now, which is amazing.
yeah.
He sold his insurance company. What is it about him that you love? Because of course there's been many people that we know personally that have made it, or so-called made it in business. Why him?
So for myself, he's genuine. And I think that's something that this day in this world is missing in general. So obviously he's got the immigrant story, he's got, rags to riches, like all that stuff is cool. But there's a lot of those people out there, like you said. But I feel like he's genuine. He doesn't say things, and maybe now he can, because now he's worth hundreds of millions. So now he's at that point where he's got the FU money and he's just like, I'm going to do. But looking back, he never agreed with this side for the sake of money or for the sake of bettering him, right? And I can't even say that. Like, I can't say my entire life that I haven't said, sure, I'm okay with that, when really deep down I wasn't, right? Whereas now I try to make sure I'm 100% true to myself and genuine. But that's the one thing that I took from him, is that he's 100% genuine. Like, he is going against the grain when it comes to all media outlets, who he wants to interview. Like, even just on Rogan, he's just, hate it or love it, he's telling, he's like, man, you need to have Trump on this podcast, right? He said it about 15 times, right? And so I think, and if you look at him as the technical demographic, immigrant, whatever, he would not be a Trump supporter in most eyes, right? Or most demographics, I would say. So and it's not the fact, and just to be clear, it's not the fact that he's pro-Trump or whatever that makes me like it. That's obviously something that we have in common, but it's not that. It's the fact that he's willing to say it where it could jeopardize his business. And in turn, it's actually catapulted his business, which has been pretty awesome. And that's the other thing too. Like, and that's one of the things I love about Joe Rogan as well, is they'll interview everybody, right? Like, if they find some kind of interest or they want to have some kind of conversation with them, and he's not belittling, he doesn't call them idiots. He's not like, he speaks very well. He's very intelligent. Yeah. I'm definitely a big fan.
Yeah. We look at valuetainment in the States. Could it be possible to create something similar here? We have a great crew. digital nomads, and a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood now joining us on this force across the nation. Do you think one day we could create our own valuetainment or something similar?
Sure, 100% you can. And I think, like, I don't want to speak for him by any means, but I think he's looking to create this kind of movement. So even I would be shocked if he didn't even come to the table of some sort and want to help grow that everywhere, right? So yeah, I think so. I think we're in a tipping point in time right now. You know, like life has been so good for so many years, right? That we're finding reasons to make it difficult. And I think,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and I think right now a lot of eyes are opening because we're on the cusp of going into something incredibly horrible, or we can do a 180 and get back to the good times.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big chunk, and I genuinely think it's almost 50-50. Maybe even it is a silent majority that want to go back to the good times. I don't know the stats, to be very blunt and honest.
But
But
when they say what is the good times, what would the good times be to you?
so for me, man, I'm 100% pro freedom. You know, like I want to respect everybody's individual freedoms. That's the best way to put it, right? Is I want you to go to work. I want everybody to work hard. I want everybody not to have the same like guaranteed finality or guaranteed what you're going to end up with, but I want everybody to have a level playing field on where they can start and where the opportunity starts. I want everybody to be able to, if you want to be whatever gender, be whatever gender. I don't care. But don't force me to say certain things, right? There's so many things we're fighting about that there's no reason to fight about. We need to curtail our emotions, right? And just get back to logic. I think that's what it is. Get back to logic. I've had staff and they're all good people, but the things I've heard, like as a kid when I worked at the mills, like when I was 15 years old, barely could get a job. Like even when I was like 9 or 10 with a paper route, and I had 3 of them skating away or rollerblading, dropping off, whatever. That work ethic outweighs like 9 out of 10 of the employees that we've hired in the past. You know what I mean? We've had some amazing ones, don't get me wrong, but it is mind blowing just what people expect versus what they're willing to give. And I feel like a lot of it is social media has done this as well, because you don't find negative stuff on social media. You don't find like, hey, look how fat I am right now in social media. You find everybody in their best form. You find everybody's a baller. Nobody's rich. You know, they could all be ballers off their credit cards, but they're all ballers, right? Even in our business, and I get flack for saying it, like there's so many people driving like Ferraris and Lambos and all these other things, and they got $10 in their bank account. They're living out of their Ferrari. You know what I mean? So there's getting back into reality, logic, like let's just work, let's move together, we can all grow. The opportunity is there for everybody, right? No handouts. The problem with handouts too is if I give you something, it's just like earning that or just like winning the lottery.
Exactly, you'll lose it, and you don't know how to maintain it or manage that kind of fund. Yeah.
And you don't appreciate it. You know, that's what spoiled kids are. We've become a spoiled society, right? That's what my number one fear for my kids is me giving them too much shit. You know what I mean? And because I know what those spoiled brats are like, right? And that's what the society is. You owe me this. For what? Because you're breathing? No. You're a grown person. You have the opportunity like nobody else. In North America, we have still the greatest opportunity that has ever happened, right? We live in democracy for now, right? You can create unlimited wealth. You just have to go out and do it.
Why are people hard on people about that, though? Well, it must be nice for you, Sean. It seems easy for you to say wealth and all these things, but some of us got to grind through it because I got this excuse, this excuse, this excuse.
Yeah, everybody has excuses, right? So that I'm not gonna, and this is what I say to a lot of people, right? Because I get this kind of stuff. Even stupidest stuff is like, hey, well, why don't you pick up the phone and start cold calling? Well, I'm not like you, Sean. I'm not an extrovert. I can't call like you. Well, they don't know that I've done probably 50,000 cold calls in my life, right? And I started when I was 16 years old, and I may be a little bit extroverted now, but I wasn't then, et cetera, et cetera, et
They don't
cetera.
know all the no's you got or the rejections or the feeling you had to pick up that call and dial those numbers.
It's all the same for everybody. But the exact response that says, like, listen, bro, the exact thing that you're saying right now, but you don't have it like you. I'm not like you, or I'm not like this. I'm like, listen, what you aren't and where we are really different is I am not going to race you to the bottom of who has it worse. I'm going to make my position better. And I think this is one of the different mentalities that we no longer have in society in general. It's like, who has it worse? Let's see who has it worse. Like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. No, I got it bad. I got it worse. No, I got it worse. And it's like, we're competing to see who has it the shittiest, right? I'm competing to see who's going to win.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not going to let those excuses stop me from winning, because I got them, but I don't want to talk about them because I want them gone. I'm going to pretend like they're not there. Whereas everybody else is going to use that as their crutch. Like, look at our good buddy Seb. The guy's going to get his freaking leg cut off. He's like, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, let's go. Right? it's the mentality that's completely different. You could look at that and be like, I'm done forever. And for those that don't know him, and I'm sure whoever follows you definitely knows him, I mean, I remember him in CrossFit in full ERT gear doing chin-ups and like 600-pound squats with a pistol and an MP5 or something across his chest. Like, the guy's an absolute animal and a beast, right? And since I've known him, he is still that, though. Even though he's gone through some devastating injuries, he's still that. Mentally, he's still that, right?
It's his spirit.
So,
You can't break him. It's his spirit.
exactly.
But he had to build himself up to get there. It doesn't just happen. He was not born like that. It's that work he puts in on a daily.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And so instead of worrying about, and you hit it, you build yourself to this, right? So, but the people that build yourself, that, let's just even look at that word build, right? You're layering good on top of good, on top of good, on top of good, work on top of work, on top of, that's how you're building, right? Instead, what we're doing is we're digging trenches. We're like, oh, but I can't do this because of that. And I can't do this. And I can't do this. And we're using all of these excuses to stop from building ourselves. Instead, a year and a half ago, I ran 3 kilometers on my treadmill and puked. That's how out of shape I was. On Saturday, I ran a 50-kilometer ultra marathon around Mount St. Helens. That's 1.5 year difference. 40 pounds down, I'm benching 300 plus pounds, then I can barely bounce one. And this is not like, now everybody's like, yeah, Sean, but you're a runner. Now, Sean, but you work out all the time. Yes. But at that moment, a year and a half ago, that's when I decided I was going to be a runner. That's when I decided I was going to start working out again. That's when I decided. And then every single day is one step further. That, from a guy that fought MMA professionally in my 20s, right, to running 3K and puking, if you don't think that messes with your mind more than anything, because I thought of myself still, even though I was wrong,
as that person.
Yeah, I'm still Sean, the MMA fighter. Yeah, I'm a little bit chubbier, but I still smash nobody, everybody. This is the stupid shit that goes on in your head. Then you go on the treadmill and you can't even run 3K. You're a loser instantly in your brain, right? But if I let that be my excuse, and trust me, the excuses were like, Sean, you're running a business, you're a family man now, you have this, you have that. There's no point. You don't have to. Who do you have to prove this to? You don't have to prove this to anybody, right? And is that partially true? Sure it is. But the reality is I made that decision. No, I'm going to be a runner. And so now that I am running, and I'm still not running fast, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not winning any races or anything by any means, right? But it's still a massive transformation. But it's just like you said, it was built upon. It wasn't just handed. There's nobody that's going to be like, here's your medal for running 50 kilometers, or here's your medal for running the 100 ultra that I did, 100-kilometer ultra I did earlier. That shit is not given to you. You do it.
Yeah. Are you proud of yourself on those accomplishments? Because it's not about the medals. It's about you feeling good about you.
Totally. And this is, I've heard this many times, like, Sean, sometimes you come off arrogant or you're cocky or whatever. It is not. It's exactly what you say. You build this, it's a pride, but it's a pride because you did something hard. So you tested yourself. And this is where true confidence comes from, right? Like true confidence comes from overcoming obstacles, overcoming difficult things. True confidence, you can't be given confidence. That's cockiness. That's arrogance when you just show up and you expected to be the best just because I'm alive,
The
right?
ego. Yeah.
That's the ego, exactly, right? And that's a lot of this society is like, well, look at me, I'm whatever I am. I should be given, $10,000 from the government just because, or my cousin was treated badly, so I should be, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're always looking for excuses for some reason. That is cockiness. That is arrogance. You don't deserve any of that shit. But if you have worked your butt off to do something and then accomplish something, that is confidence that people can't take away from you.
No.
That is true confidence.
Drake says something in a song of his, and Drake says, "You know it's real when you are who you say you are." And I so agree with that. It's like when you hit certain milestones and you really accomplish it and you work your ass off, it feels good, man. It really does.
100%. 100% it does. And you know, in that tone, and what kind of like what I was saying before is that because I talked to a guy I was picking his brain on becoming like learning how to do this running stuff, right? I didn't realize there was so much stuff to it. And when I talked to him, I'm like, yeah, bro, I'm excited to be an ultra runner. He's like, no, bro. He's like, you are an ultra runner. You may have not done the ultra run yet. May have not whatever. But when you're training, you're an ultra runner. As soon as you lace up your shoes and you start running, you're a runner.
You're a runner.
Right. And so these are the types of things, and exactly like you say, is now I'm not talking about doing something. I'm doing it. The action is happening, right? And when the action happens, that's when you start feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. We have a friend of ours, Satch, that's running 22 days. I mean, even just marathon. Yeah, sorry. And even just to do that, and it's remarkable because you have to have a purpose greater than yourself. You're doing it for the betterment of the world, the society, your community. I just find it remarkable to have that within you, especially after the hits you take and the callousness you have to build on your mind. It's remarkable.
And to add to that, because I agree, his purpose, the Honor House, and all the other things that he's doing is absolutely amazing. Mental health and all those. But I think also too, I think one thing that we do as humans a lot of times, or people that are doing this for other people, is we forget on how important it is to allow it to be for us as well, if that makes sense. Because he is going through this process, and he's going to be raising awesome amounts of money for the Honor House. He's going to be bringing tons of awareness, but he's also going to be building the best version of such he's ever been.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think like this is, I've had conversations, and obviously with some other people that we know and so on and so forth, and talking about business and growing their businesses. And I hear this a lot, especially from public service people, right? Like military and police and so on and so forth, firefighters, is that I don't want to feel like a sellout going into the business side. Right. And I hear this quite often. And I always tell them, I'm like, bro, if people genuinely care for you, they want you to do better. And if you're genuinely care for them and are giving them information or doing good things and wanting, for example, the Honor House to grow and all these different things to happen, right? It is never selling out to better yourself if you're bettering your community as well. And the reality is, the more you better yourself, the more you can help the community. Poor people can give their time and can give maybe whatever little that they have to a cause, right? Rich people can give billions that can make even more of a change, right? And so I'm just using that as a very blunt and like kind of
an example. Yeah.
Example. It's not saying you have to be rich, but the point is I feel like I'm excited for not just what he's going to do for Honor House and whatever, but who he's going to become after this.
Yeah. And we all benefit from such becoming the incredible person he's becoming. So
yeah. And since I met him maybe a year ago or something like that, I met him through Seb. It's just seeing his transformation even through that has been night and day.
Yeah. When we look at the veterans, ex-military, ex-police, ex-firefighters even, what is it about them that you see because I find something remarkable and very interesting. Because obviously, I've never been in that world, man, but I see metaphors and analogies of like hardship they've faced and how I can apply it in business or in life, in my own life, differently, and it's just like, oh shit, that clicks, it just works.
Totally. It is, I try not to have any regrets in life, but that's the
Mhm.
only regret I have is not joining the military when I was younger. And it was an option, but my dad talked me out of it. But
You
yeah,
can still join.
sorry.
You can still join.
I know. I asked my wife. I looked into it last year. I'm like,
Nice.
how do I get into JTF too?
Yeah.
But anyways,
Sean Taylor's.
exactly. Like, Sean, hook me up, bro. I'm actually, funny enough, I'm doing Jeff DePatty's thing in October, so we'll see.
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah.
I'm gonna get my butt kicked there. But yeah, I think so. Obviously, there's, for me anyways, I can just speak for myself on what I respect. There's a part of it is machismo for sure. At the end of the day, it's like these guys are putting their life on the line. These guys are, they're working out for a better purpose other than, like, it's not like they're getting paid millions of dollars.
No, and that's what I don't get. You do all of this for us, for
Yeah.
the community, to keep Canada safe.
And I think it's for both. I think it's for themselves, and once again, I think
Mm.
it is, when I say this, there may be a lot of first responders that say, that's not correct at all, and I don't want to, whatever. Like, I'm just guessing, or I'm just putting, but I've read a lot of their books. I've read a lot of their, like, memoirs and so on and so forth, and what they get out of it, because they're going through the most difficult things. Like, there's nobody I respect more than an 18-year-old Marine that's in Afghanistan or whatever, right? Somebody that's putting their entire life on the line, the whole 9 yards, for no money, no whatever. But I feel like, I respect him for that portion, but I also respect what they're getting out of that scenario where they've been. Like, would Sean Taylor be the person he is without the amazing, incredible things that he's done? And he's done it for our country. He's done it for us.
It truly has, yeah.
Act. I'm not trying to say this is a selfish thing. This is a selfless act by all means. But I think that's one thing that really resonates with me is I love, like, mentors. I love people that have gone through extremely difficult things, have put themselves in situations that most others wouldn't, right? Have survived that. And from that, they've had some massive growth. And so I'm trying to learn from that growth and, like, understand, like, what is it like with bullet, like, I'm big into firearms, so I've shot a lot of guns, but I've never had them pointed at me and shot at me. You know what I mean? So it is a much different scenario to having bullets whizzing by you and still keeping your mentality the way it is. So I think that's what draws me towards a lot of them is obviously the selfless and the valor and the act that's there. It's the fact that they're doing things that most people won't, which always draws me towards, Cameron Haynes, David Goggins, all these extremes. And I think, like, there's a lot to learn from them, respect from them, and learn from them from what they've been through. Because, if you can live through war, battle, like, scenarios in teams and still have your mindset and everything else, it is something that you can't get taught in school. It's something that you can't get taught, by anybody other than that. And honestly, I don't even think if I could ever be taught it by any means, but understand a little bit, I think I could be able to gain a little bit of insight, I guess.
Totally. And when you look at Sean, him and Chance have created with all of us the collective.
Yeah.
And while we all look at that and say, I mean, you're giving up your time again.
Yeah.
You're teaching us things. You don't have to do these things, but you do it for the betterment. And again, it goes back to that actions, deeds, not just words. Sean shows us kind of like the way through his, like, life, and I love it.
Yeah.
It kicks our own ass in ways.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. He's like ATF2 Yoda.
Yes, yes. Wisdom.
Wisdom, exactly.